Hey, you. Yeah, you let me greet you properly because whatever has been happening around you lately, it deserves a real introduction. You deserve someone acknowledging the strange weight tightening around your life, the pressure you've been carrying in your ribs without knowing why, the way your days have felt slightly tilted, like something invisible shifted without permission. So hey, I'm glad you showed up today. I'm glad you kept moving even when everything felt dense and unfamiliar. I'm glad you didn't fold when the atmosphere around you started acting like it knew something you didn't. And I'm especially glad you're here now, because you probably haven't realized what really triggered all this tension. The truth is, someone who moves things behind the scenes, someone whose name travels in rooms you'll never see, just marked you as interesting. And no, not the cute kind of interesting. I mean the kind that makes power players pause mid-thought and flag you internally, like a variable worth tracking. Isn't that something? You thinking you're just trying to survive another week? Meanwhile, somebody with real influence saw something in you that made them stop whatever else they were doing and think, hold on. Who is this? And why are they rising like this? Why are they adapting this quickly? Why do they feel like someone who wasn't supposed to grow at this speed? You can tell when someone with actual authority starts paying attention to you, because the environment reacts before the person ever does. People shift around you without knowing why. Conversations get strange. Faces tighten. Rooms feel different when you walk in. You say a single sentence, and someone across the space glances at you like you changed the mood without lifting a finger. That's the side effect of being flagged by someone who operates in the shadows. They don't send messages or announcements. They watch the ripple your energy makes. They watch how the world bends around you. They watch the places where your presence disrupts predictable patterns. And lately, your disruptions have been loud without you speaking a word. People detected a change they can't categorize. They detected a seriousness in your posture that wasn't there before. They detected a growing steadiness in your gaze, a shift in the way you move, a weight in the way you exist. That's what caught their attention. That's what made someone with real reach stop scrolling through their internal catalog of variables and place a mental pen right on your name. And here's the part nobody warned you about. Once a behind-the-scenes operator flags you, you don't go back to normal. Your life becomes a monitored corridor, not by cameras, by instincts, by impressions, by the psychological reflexes of people who sense something rising in you long before you say it out loud. You've been breaking ceilings quietly. You've been changing direction without announcements. You've been evolving in ways your environment can't absorb. And that's what triggers the watchers, not the public ones, the hidden ones. That's why everything feels like it's tightening. That's why your emotions feel heavier. That's why your emotions feel heavier. That's why your intuition won't sit still. Someone with real power just moved you from the ignore category into the track this category. And now you're living in the aftermath of that decision. They're watching how you move. They're studying your shifts. They're replaying your name at inconvenient hours. And the funniest part? You still think you're the one trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, someone with resources you'll never see is sitting in a room somewhere thinking about you more than you think about yourself. That's how these people operate. They don't show their face. They don't announce their interest. They don't tap you on the shoulder and introduce themselves. They pull a single string and wait to see which parts of your life start rearranging. And lately, the rearrangement has been impossible to ignore. Your days feel charged. Your interactions feel off. Your decisions feel like they're carrying extra weight. You're walking through your routine, but something about the air around you isn't the same. That's the mark. Not the visible kind, the energetic kind, the psychological kind, the kind where someone with pull flags your presence, and suddenly the world reacts like you stepped into a new tier without being briefed. You've been waking up differently, not anxious, alert. That subtle difference matters. Anxiety asks questions, alertness waits for answers. You've noticed the shift in people too. Some have grown cautious around you, like they're sensing something you haven't announced. Others have started acting strangely curious, popping into your life at odd moments, trying to get a read on you. And then they're the ones who avoid eye contact now, like you're carrying something they don't want to acknowledge. All of this is evidence of the same thing. Someone influential tagged your energy and the ripple hit everyone around you before it hit you one. People who operate in the background don't need to speak for the world to adjust. The adjustment happens naturally, like a chain reaction. You move differently, they respond. You speak differently, they overanalyze. You detach slightly, they panic. And the person who started all this, they're watching with that quiet fascination reserved for rare variables. You've been mistaken for average your whole life. Not because you were average, but because you were quiet about your strength. You've always grown in corridors nobody bothered to inspect. You endured things privately. You rebuilt quietly. You sharpened your mindset without performing it for anyone. But that's exactly what made you stand out. People with real power don't care about showmanship. They care about the ones who evolve without applause, the ones who rise without witnesses, the ones who develop stability in environments intended to break them. They saw that in you. They saw the way you carry memories that should have ruined you, but somehow made you precise. They saw the restraint in your decisions, the way you don't rush, the way you don't crumble publicly, the way you don't weaponize your pain. That calm under pressure is rare, and nothing catches a power player's attention faster than someone who refuses to be shaped by their circumstances. You've been moving like someone who outgrew their surroundings months before realizing it. The people around you still see the older version of you, the one who tolerated too much, stayed too long, bit their tongue too often. But the new version, the one forming under your skin, that version carries weight. That version feels expensive. That version has eyes that don't look away. That version has boundaries carved out of past experiences, not temporary moods. And the person watching you picked up on that before you did. They saw the shift in your stance, the firmness in your voice, the way your energy no longer bends for convenience. They saw someone who started owning their value quietly, someone who started taking themselves seriously without asking permission. And once you step into self-respect at that level, it's impossible for people who operate in high spaces to ignore you. You probably think you're just navigating life with a bit more focus, a bit more awareness, a bit more caution. But to someone trained to detect patterns, your shift looks like a signal flare. They track something in your timing. Your adjustments, your reactions, your refusal to spiral, your ability to stay composed even when things feel unfamiliar. They noticed you handling challenges with a steadiness that doesn't match your environment. They saw the difference between who you used to be and who you're slowly becoming. And now they're curious. They're trying to understand what forged that composure, They're trying to decode the blueprint of someone who should have broken but didn't. They're trying to determine why your growth didn't match the projections of your surroundings. That curiosity alone is enough to place you in their mental catalog. And here's where it gets chaotic. The moment someone with influence marks you as interesting, your life shifts into a different temperature. The smallest choices start carrying major momentum. A sentence you say casually gets interpreted like strategy. A moment of stillness gets analyzed like preparation. You walk into a room and people sense you differently, even if they can't articulate why. That's not because you've changed your personality. It's because your energy is no longer unclaimed. You've been acknowledged by someone who operates above the visible layers of life, and that acknowledgement carries a gravitational pull. The world around you senses the shift before you process it logically. Your instincts start picking up on subtleties you previously ignored. Tones, movements, glances, patterns. You're not paranoid, you're adjusting to the new altitude. Let's talk about the heaviness you've been feeling. It's not exhaustion, it's the weight of your untapped potential pressing against its container. Someone flagged you because they saw what you haven't fully accepted, that you're transitioning into a version of yourself that doesn't fit your old life. They noticed the impatience building inside you, the discomfort with stagnancy, the way you outgrow conversations midway through them. They saw that restless intelligence forming behind your eyes, the sharpness in your perception, the maturity in your reactions. These qualities are easy to overlook when you're busy surviving, but to a power player, they're signals. They indicate readiness, they indicate capability, they indicate momentum. You keep thinking you're behind in life. Meanwhile, someone influential saw you as ahead of schedule. You keep thinking you're late. Meanwhile, they saw acceleration. You keep thinking you're just trying to stay afloat. Meanwhile, they saw someone adapting like a strategist without ever being trained as one. They're not impressed with your progress. They're intrigued by the direction. They don't care about your achievements. They care about the mindset fueling them. They're analyzing the parts of you hide, not the parts you showcase. People like them don't become invested easily. They've seen thousands of individuals chase relevance, beg for recognition, or crumble under pressure. But you're not operating from desperation. You're operating from growth. You're not trying to get attention. You accidentally earned it. You didn't try to stand out. Your evolution made you stand out. You didn't try to appear powerful. You became powerful quietly through choices nobody applauded. And that's the precise reason they flagged you. You represent a rising factor, a developing force, a potential shift in the landscape they monitor. You've probably felt a strange sense of being observed. Not in a dramatic way, but in the way your intuition keeps nudging you like you're being evaluated. Thoughts arrive sharper. Decisions feel weighted. Your emotions carry depth. Your instincts speak louder than your doubts. These internal changes aren't random. They're proof that you've stepped into a new level of awareness triggered by external attention. You're adjusting to being watched by someone who doesn't watch casually. People like them go straight to the root of someone's character. They study the fractures and the strengths. They watch how someone behaves under pressure. They evaluate not what you say, but how you respond when nobody is clapping, and your responses have been consistent, strong, disciplined, sharper than ever. That's what hooked them. This is where you need to pay attention. Once someone with real influence places you on their mental radar, they're not expecting entertainment. They're expecting evolution. They want to see how you handle obstacles. They want to see how you rise without applause. They want to see if your discipline holds when circumstances shift. They're watching to see whether your growth was a fluke or the beginning of a larger transformation. They're monitoring your composure, your focus, your direction, and whether you admit it or not, you can feel that evaluation happening. You can feel your life narrowing into a path that demands more from you. You can feel the urgency forming behind your decisions. You can feel the sharpened edges of your mindset becoming more defined. And here's the real twist. The reason this attention feels heavy is because you're stepping into a version of yourself built for bigger territories. Your old habits don't fit anymore. Your old fears don't control you anymore. Your old patterns don't interest you anymore. You've outgrown too many layers too quickly. That growth is what triggered the watcher. They saw a person evolving at a pace that doesn't match their surroundings. They saw someone breaking invisible ceilings quietly. They saw someone controlling their emotions with precision. They saw someone rising without noise. And someone like that becomes unforgettable fast. Now the question lingering in the air, the one they're trying to answer, the one you're starting to feel in your bones, is simple. What happens next? What does someone like you become once the world starts reacting to you differently? What does someone like you turn into after being flagged by someone who rarely flags anyone at all? What path unfolds when pressure turns into purpose? Because make no mistake, this isn't random and it isn't accidental. People who operate behind the scenes pick their targets carefully. They don't waste their curiosity on predictable individuals. They don't study people who crumble easily. They don't track those who move in circles too small to make a ripple. They look for rising currents. They look for unusual emotional strength. They look for unusual emotional strength. They look for minds that refuse to shut off. They look for people who reinvent themselves without creating spectacle. And somewhere along the way, you started fitting that description so perfectly that you triggered an instinct they trust more than logic. You might think your growth has been subtle, quiet changes, small decisions, minor adjustments. But to someone reading patterns, your evolution has been loud. They saw you shift the way you breathe when you got serious. They saw you step back from distractions. They saw you detach from people effortlessly. When you recognized misalignment, they saw how your eyes started carrying a depth that wasn't there before. They saw how you stopped responding emotionally to things that once knocked you off balance. Every one of those tiny changes formed a larger picture, and that picture made them pause. And here comes the chaotic humor of the whole situation. You didn't upgrade your life for attention, you upgraded for survival. You upgraded because staying the same became more painful than evolving. But that unintended transformation ended up catching someone who shouldn't be watching you in the first place. Someone who's built their reputation on detecting threats, opportunities, and rising forces long before the public sees them. Someone who knows that the most dangerous individuals are often the ones who didn't realize they were becoming dangerous. This is where things get interesting for you. Because once someone behind the scenes marks you, your life moves into an entirely different landscape. You start noticing patterns you never cared about. You start catching yourself thinking from higher altitudes. Your decisions become sharper because you feel the weight behind them. You begin to sense that your words carry farther, your movements send signals. Your presence leaves impressions that don't fade. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. You're growing into a level that demands consciousness, and they're watching how quickly you adjust to that level. They're watching the way you absorb pressure like it's nothing. They're watching the way you adapt without announcing your adaptation. They're watching your mindset strengthen in real time. They're not studying the past version of you. They're studying the one unfolding right now. The one waking up inside your ribs with every boundary you set, every layer you shed, every instinct you listen to. People like them don't get impressed easily. They've seen too many people break under their own ego. They've watched countless individuals ruin themselves, chasing validation. They've observed people overestimate their potential and collapse under their own fantasies. But you're not moving like that. You're not loud. You're not reckless. You're not begging for recognition. You're not trying to perform your evolution. You're just becoming quietly, intentionally, efficiently. And that terrifies and fascinates the kind of person who moves behind the scenes. That's why they can't get you out of their head. That's why your name loops in their mind at odd hours. They're trying to understand how you went from overlooked to unavoidable. They're trying to determine whether your shift was triggered by pain, awareness, or something deeper. They're trying to understand how someone with your history managed to produce a level of emotional discipline that most people never reach. They're trying to identify your trajectory, whether you know it or not. You haven't been imagining the tension in your environment. People around you feel the shift too. Some react with curiosity, some react with insecurity, some react with insecurity, some react with confusion. They can't articulate it, but they sense you're not in the same category anymore. You don't respond the way you used to. You don't explain as much. You don't argue the way you once did. You don't chase conversations or approval. You move with a heavier internal compass now. And that change alters the dynamics of every interaction. And the watcher sees that. They're analyzing how you affect your environment without even trying. They're studying the way people adjust around you. The way silence falls when you enter, the way tension rises when you speak with clarity. They're observing the gravitational pull forming around you slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. They're watching the emergence of someone who doesn't just survive their past, but weaponizes its lessons. You don't fully understand what you're becoming yet, and that's exactly why they're watching. They're trying to catch the moment when your potential snaps into identity. They're waiting to see when your self-awareness catches up with your capability. They're watching to see if the pressure strengthens you or fractures you. They're analyzing your resilience, your focus, your emotional bandwidth. They want to know if your rise is sustainable or flash-based. And every signal you sent so far suggests something they don't see often. Consistency under chaos. There's a dark humor to this situation. Because while you're over here trying to figure out why your emotions have been intense, why your instincts feel louder, why your decisions carry weight, someone behind the scenes, this is not someone who reacts emotionally or impulsively. This is someone who calculates, someone whose instincts are sharpened from years of watching people shift, collapse, rise, or implode. Someone who knows the exact moment a person becomes a threat or an asset. And when they looked at you, they didn't see something to dismiss. They saw something forming. That's the part you haven't fully accepted. You're not being watched because you're fragile. You're being watched because you're becoming influential without trying. Your presence is starting to create tension. Your choices are starting to carry impact. Your growth is starting to alter the way people behave around you. You don't see it the way they do because you're focused on surviving your internal adjustments. But someone behind the scenes saw the broader blueprint. They saw the arc, the direction, the expanding reach. They recognize the early signs of someone who will command space naturally once their identity aligns with their potential. And that's what fascinates them, the gap between who you've been forced to be and who you're starting to become. They can see the conflict, the questioning, the sharpening. They can see the internal rewiring that happens when someone stops living by reaction and starts living by intention. They saw the flicker of power before you owned it. They saw the ambition behind your restraint. They saw the confidence building quietly in your posture. They saw the maturity forming behind your eyes. None of this is accidental. You've been rearranging yourself from the inside out. And someone with real power spotted the shift before you articulated it. This attention isn't a burden, it's confirmation. The world doesn't tilt for people who pose no threat to the narrative. Hidden eyes don't study people who are predictable. Private rooms don't say your name unless something about you disrupted the usual pattern of things. And that's exactly what you did. Without raising your voice, without performing for attention, without chasing recognition, you simply evolved. And your evolution wasn't subtle, not to someone trained to detect the smallest indicators of change. Let's talk about that internal sensation you've been carrying, the weight in your chest that feels like pressure and preparation at the same time. That's not anxiety, that's alignment. That's the moment before the next version of you stabilizes. You transitioning between identities, stepping out of who you were and stepping into who you're meant to be. And transitions like this never go unnoticed by someone who makes moves from the shadows. They watch people at the edges. The moment before the breakthrough, the moment before the shift, the moment before the shift, the moment before someone becomes undeniable. You're in that exact phase, the raw, uncomfortable middle where everything is changing but nothing has fully solidified yet. They want to see how you handle that tension. They want to see whether you panic or refine, whether you crumble or calibrate, whether you drift or direct. Everything about you right now is data to them, not the creepy kind, the strategic kind. They're studying things you overlook. The consistency in your choices, the maturity in your reactions, the steadiness in your emotional control, the intelligence behind your restraint. They're watching the way you carry your pain without broadcasting it. They're watching the way you adjust to discomfort. They're watching the way you move when nobody validates you. And here's the chaotic humor. They don't know whether you're aware of your own rise or if you're just naturally this composed under pressure. That mystery is exactly what keeps their attention locked. Most people either crumble visibly or overperform loudly. But you operate in the middle space where power is built, quietly aware, quietly disciplined, quietly transforming. That's unnerving to the kind of person who knows exactly what that combination produces long term. The reason your intuition has been restless is because you're tapping into a frequency you've never lived in before. You're not responding to life from the ground anymore. You're responding from elevation. You're sensing things before they unfold. You're reading people faster than they speak. You're detecting intentions before words leave their mouth. This sensitivity is not a flaw. It's the survival instinct of someone rising, and the watcher recognized it instantly. You probably noticed how certain habits feel childish now, how certain conversations feel beneath your attention, how certain people feel draining, how certain environments feel too small. That's not arrogance, that's expansion. You're growing into a self that refuses to shrink back into roles you've outgrown. You're not meant to stay where you were. Your rise is already in motion.